So did they make Dutch movies in the 1930s?
About
1 a year, maybe?
I think about 5, maybe.
5 in total? For the entire 30s.
Yeah. No film. There was no film industry in the...
No. We barely have one now, but...
But what happened was that when Germany became...
Problematical.
Yes. Some people with talent who did come from a place of industry, of film industry, from Germany, left, and some went to Hollywood, but some...
Went to Western Europe.
Yeah, and this guy came to the Netherlands to do...
Oh, right. Okay, so...
And this is
Frederic
why we have
Zelnic
films.
Is...
He's not
right.
Dutch, yes.
He's not Dutch. Okay. Yes.
And it is in combination with Lily Bouwmeester, who is the young star of the Bouwmeester family, who was a theater family, but she was theater people.
Right.
And all the people who are in this thing are all theater people, to the point that funny story is when they were doing scenes, they were doing them in the daytime, and at night these actors, all the gentlemen, and she has a big role, but the gentlemen didn't have a bigger role big enough, they were on stage the very same night, every single night. So film in the daytime, stage at night, because their day job is theater, and the film is extra, and it was hopefully a start of something. Because Lily Bouwmeester started a film company. She was in a Dutch version of Daddy Longlegs. Mm-hmm. And she was in a Dutch version of Pygmalion, the short play, which the My Fair Lady was based on. And she shines. And
she is an absolute star.
And then
you can see it.
On the back of that, with this director and some available talent, they decided to start a small studio, and these at least a couple of films came out before they did this one. So I think this is now film number 3 or number 2 and number 3
on her list, at any rate, number 3.
Yeah, and but she was even before she came to film, she was famous for being a good actress on the stage. She was already somebody. So good director, suddenly a film industry, and after 1939, history happened, and that's ended it. Yeah. I did look her up, and I will show her here. She lived to be a ripe old age, which is something. I'm going to say that some of these people I'm going to look up are not going to be living to a ripe old age. I will see that in the edit, and we'll stop talking about it now. Yeah. So, as it comes up.
Yeah.
Another person who did live to a very ripe old age was Wim Kan. Who is at that moment, I looked him up, he was about 29 at the time, the young screenplay writer. He had a career of stand-up, evening-filling comedy shows, political commentary comedy, but just him on stage the entire time, his own written material, some other written material, but mostly his own written material. He basically, from this point on, he just kept on writing the entire rest of his life. Also, ripe old age.
Yeah.
So,
yes,
Wim Kan is wonderful.
Yeah.
He's anytime you see something really poignant and really smartly rhymed, it's Wim Kan.
Yeah.
He was so good at that.
I felt that because this is 1939 and the book would have been in Polish originally or French originally.
And Annemarie Selinko was Austrian, but she left and ended up in Denmark. So she would probably it would have been in German.
They grabbed her out of Paris for this film.
She was traveling around for a while, but she ended up in Denmark. This is why because she's the one who wrote Désirée. That's about somebody who ended up in Sweden, from France to Sweden. So it's complicated
and
lady.
And then comes back in here because she's studying history, and they're like, all these dates. What do I do with the dates? And then during the oral exam, they ask her, well, which part of history do you like? And she starts Napoleon and
Josephine.
Marie Antoinette, the whole thing.
Yes,
so
I think the problem with this movie, if you're gonna have to look it up, is that I thought there was a version with English subtitles, but I couldn't find it. So there is there's at least 2 versions on YouTube right now, and one of them is nicely scaled up, so it's pretty good for what it is. Yeah. That's the one I watched, and there's another one. I think probably the upscale is from the other one, but they're both add up as at the moment we're doing this. But we're going to actually usually we don't, but we're going to tell the story because there's no subtitles. We might as well tell the story because there is no subtitles. And there's also no English version of this entire story because the book is pretty famous in its own right.
No, there should be an English translation of the book somewhere.
No, but there's no film. So if there's no other film, I can't refer you to the other film.
Désirée, of course, that was the film with Marlon Brando in 1950, whatever it was.
Yes, 53, I believe. 4?
Everything's 1954.
Yeah, it is.
So young girl, she lives with her dad.
Yeah, and she goes to a school called, they don't say, but I know what it is. It's the HBS. She's going to a HBS.
Yes, because afterwards you can actually go to university. Yeah,
and a HBS is very interesting because this is an older set of schools that we didn't go to, but our parents...
it's an older school system,
would have gone to it if they hadn't gone to another school. But HBS is a very middling education, but good. And an interesting thing about this one is, and she says it later, because it is high school, she's also learned steno and typing. Yeah. And I think those are actually the most important things.
But she doesn't say whether or not the school provided that or that she actually went out and did a separate course, because that's what I did.
Yeah, but that's our generation. Yeah. No, they would have learned this in school.
Yeah, and probably because they were women.
Yeah,
because probably wouldn't have sent.
Yeah, and it's the HBS is also
a girls' only school.
It is a girls' only school, and they're trying
not
to.
Not that many of them in the Netherlands, not even then, but.
But the HBS is actually geared to women who are not, per definition, are going to go into a household. She was given...
The idea is to go study first because her friend is actually, by the time that she catches up with her friend, is in university.
Yeah, studying. But what I'm trying to say is that the level is pretty high. She is floundering, which is... I thought when I was watching, I was going, this is so Dutch in a way, because one of the problems that we consider in the Netherlands a social problem, which the schools have worked hard on, is floundering in school at exam time. Particularly at exam time, that you just have a blackout. That we know so much about blackout, and that they have, over time, they have staggered the exam system in such a way that, have like a bunch of grades you can get through the year, and then you can do a final exam, which is a proper examination with people, and a very, very tense, but it is only half your grade. For her, it's all her grade.
Yes, and it is an oral exam.
Yeah, and that's...
So
that's
doubly horrible.
I think the oral exam may be for the sake of the film.
The film could be because usually you have written and an oral. No, you have both.
No, but you have oral for like...
everything.
For English?
Everything. No, for everything.
For everything?
For everything. Okay. Especially history, yes.
So maybe it's also possible that she had both, like a sitting down and an oral. And this is only part of it. But this is what you can show.
And they sent the girls to what they call Alpha, which is like languages, social sciences, etc.
History.
So she was doing history. She was probably doing languages, but we only ever see the history teacher because you have to
the history teacher in this one is also her Dutch teacher, and Dutch as our own language, as literature and stuff like that. Language. So she had this teacher for these both subjects, and
the teacher did not like her.
and
that does happen.
It happens.
When you have the major teacher is against you, then you're screwed.
But the examiners, because the teacher is not the only final examiner. That's one of
the reason why there is a board of oral examiners.
Yeah.
And they come from different schools.
And that is just there to make sure that any bias that the teacher may have, or even the school may have, which happens a lot,
yes,
that goes away.
Yeah.
And pretty soon after this, after World War II, sometime they're going to do a standard exam for everything. So we did the proper final exam for our levels, a national exam, which was graded nationally. Yes, there was a local component to it, but there an outside examiner came in for most of the stuff, and it's checked somewhere. And to the point that the English multiple choice was 3 parts, and one of them was multiple choice. That was published after the exam went, nationally published, and then people could check what they cribbed off to see how far you get. This,
but that wouldn't have happened then, because you'd have to publish it in a newspaper and all that. So.
But they give her enough that she has steno and typing and enough language skills and personable skills to go out in the world, which unfortunately she does.
And then she goes into the world, and then she has been saying all this time also to the people in the hospital where this young man, Meneer Herder, Alfred Herder, is in the hospital in the same room as her dad.
Her dad is doing really badly.
Yeah, because he has a heart problem and he's slowly dying. But she talks to the guy in the room, and he likes her because she's more entertaining than the wallpaper. Yeah. And he said he's been there for 4 weeks, so he's bored. We don't find out what he was in there for.
It's probably tuberculosis, because that's the one thing that keeps you in hospital long, and you still come out. Yeah.
So he offers her, well, if you need a job, then, come look me up. But she goes out into the world saying, I have my paper. And I now have a diploma, so they will hire me. But it's the 1930s. It's the late 1930s. And I think that's one of the plot points of the entire film is the Great Depression. How do we keep our chin up? That is one of the things. And she is forever optimistic. And so she's like Annie or Anne of Green Gables and Pollyanna. It's that kind of optimism that cannot be shaken until, of course, something happens. And then she's... So she goes out and does not find a job.
Yeah. And I have to add some information here. That's also something you're not going to know, because not Dutch. And also, I almost don't know, we almost don't know, is that in 1939, or at least in the 1950s, when I do have information, is it took some time for Hollywood movies to make it here. Like maybe 3 to 5 years. So in the time that they made this movie, in 1939, they were looking at Hollywood movies from 1936. You can actually see that pretty clearly. Yeah. This is a little bit older style, so you're going to go... some of the themes and
you can tell that the cinematography, they are trying stuff. There's experimental stuff going on that you see in Hitchcockian type of, when she's in this hospital and the father is dying, there's this moment where it's just, you see them moving and the camera's all the way down a hallway on the floor. And you see nurses and doctors go in. And when the nurses and doctors go into that room that you don't see into, you see she's actually standing there. She was being dwarfed by the nurses and doctors, and now she's standing there. And you go, okay, he's dead. He's dead. So that's really cleverly done, but at the same time you could tell they didn't have time to film that, try it out, see how it actually comes on the screen, and then adjust for it. You can tell it's still an experimental angle. Yep. And they do that several times, not that angle specifically, but that type of experiment. One time they do an actual pan back to one person and back to the other person, and they kind of stop doing that. Like, probably realize that once they've seen the dailies, if there was such a thing, they went, okay, that's a little much for just a conversation, let's not do that too often. But that was the 30s. They were trying all sorts of stuff. Also because you're a studio that is making like 3 movies altogether. You're really baby. You can't create a history, and you can't build up. It's not like the Hollywood studios where you just have 10 movies going on at the same time. And the same thing applies to the acting. Yes, the actors are really very good, but you have to keep in mind that these are stage actors. They are a little bit over enunciated.
we can hear it a lot in the Dutch. It's over enunciated. Probably even Lily herself is a little loud. And I think it's because she's used to projecting to the back of the
and probably
stage.
They were still. They needed to work with the mics. Maybe they figured just speak loud and clear and slow.
Yeah,
and do.
And that's another thing. Well, one of the things that the Dutch people were practiced at, and it is in here because this is about radio, is actual radio plays. Yeah. And so they have the radio people, the people that do the radio here are the actual real Dutch radio people, which is great for Dutch history. But that part, whenever you see that, is absolutely real. And they know how to do, but they're doing radio mics. They're not doing film mics. They don't particularly know about that. It's not bad, but it sounds a little different from what you're used to from Hollywood stuff.
Yeah, and one thing that I noticed was the lines, the actual text, is stuff we would say now. Yes, it was very formal. It's all Miss So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so and the formal you. But the actual lines themselves are like, I'm not feeling well. It's the way I would say
that's
now we're not feeling well.
Wim Kan
and that's the natural way of it. Because you're expecting something, because they're speaking so formally, you're expecting, okay, it's going to be very bookish. It was not. It's just really good, normal spoken language, as we would literally say and pronounce it now. And I'm just baffled by that.
It's Wim Kan. Wim Kan was always a very good writer of all.
Personable.
On the whole, because he did a lot of comedy, which is just one person talking, you hardly ever I'm of very few times that he did a dialogue. But he can do dialogue, obviously.
Very well, yeah. And when she says something, that's something she would say.
Yeah.
And when he says something, that's definitely something he would say. And it takes a really good writer to get everybody's voices correct. And of course, the actors are working with it. They are delivering it really well. That's why I'm saying they're absolutely top-notch actors. Yes. Even though it's not how we would do it today. But the acting is fantastic because everything is very natural and very calm and very pleasant. Even
though it's over-enunciated, but you get as long as what they say is natural, it works pretty well.
As long as the actors can deliver, then they do.
Another thing that surprised me, and then later on it didn't, is there is no incidental music. Mm-hmm. There is some music because they're on the radio and they have like a big band and stuff like that, but there's no incidental music.
There's the party.
Yeah, but there's no filmic music of any kind.
No background music.
And the begin music and the end music is actually the theme tune, which became a hit.
Of course. So we'll be playing it on the radio.
Yeah,
and that's really delightful about this movie because it is about the radio, which will have been so personable to people as well. Because with TV you invite people into your homes, but before TV it was the radio with which you invite people into their homes. And that's literally the story, is she ends up doing a little speech on the radio because the guy has
he's unwell for a second.
Yeah, he got a shock, so he can't continue. And it needs to literally the last minute of the day. And she just says something really calming. And he's going... Everybody would want that voice at the end of the day.
Calm you down.
Just so lovely.
Yes. And
so the whole concept of the plot idea behind this is just so clever because you can relate to it. Even now we can relate to it.
Yeah, and radio was so big, and for many years will stay big. I mean, longer than it was in the States, because TV didn't really hit until the early mid-60s. So until that time, it was radio. And radio and every entertainment and every information and all the stuff that we do on social media now, it was radio. And social media, TV, film, everything.
Radio newspapers,
Radio newspapers. Yeah. Even the gym lesson, because she happens when she was wandering around the studio trying to find a friend, she wanders into one place where they're doing the calisthenics lesson. and there's this guy sitting in a lazy chair going puff puff and doing saying and jumping up and jumping down. It was very funny. And Vicky explains that yes, they would have wanted to do it in the actual studios. They couldn't because they're not in the actual radio studios are busy doing radio stuff, so they couldn't do that. So they rebuilt them in their studio, a couple of rooms, but with the real radio people.
Well, one thing that the environments that she is in, both at home and the hospital and in the radio studios, is that there is almost never decoration on the walls. And I was wondering if that's just how things were in the 1930s, or if that was a question of they ran out of money for decorations.
And we don't know.
Because it is very bare. Everything you look at is her with a wall behind her.
I've seen lots of pictures of many different radio and television and studios of British and Dutch, and they are not very filled with stuff.
Yeah, but also at home, and the hospital, of course, would be bare. But at home, you see, because she has this lovely apartment later on.
Yeah, but she doesn't have anything.
No, that's true.
Everything's sold.
But
so.
what I'm saying is that there's also no decoration on the wall. Like there's no busy wallpaper, which in the UK it would have been at that time would have been massively busy wallpapers.
Yeah.
So
that's
is it Calvinistic Dutch stuff?
Yeah.
We're above the rivers, we're in Protestant country. What? Is it the 1930s?
Something
is it
like that.
because there was such poverty going on?
But that's the difficult thing of trying to understand the culture from just the one movie or even a couple of the movies. Is there's just too few movies and too few stuff to show. We should have like a couple of movies from different studios of the same time, and they just don't exist. So this is what we got.
Yeah, and then she has that music box, which has again the Napoleonic theme on it. And you can see that is a piece of ornament in her fairly bare world.
It's probably pretty old.
So
it may actually be Napoleonic or earlier.
She did say it was from her father's father, which is why she wanted to keep it. Yeah. Her dad calls her Wim, and they say that he wanted a boy and he didn't know how to raise a girl, so he just raised her how he would have raised a boy.
Yeah.
And that actually gives her the tools to start going into the world and not be a dependent on that aunt that once the father dies, the aunt basically wants to take over. And she says, no, thank you. And I'll have that music box back. Yeah.
And Wim is actually the male version for Willem, which is William. Yeah. Of course, you can call your child Wilhelmina, which is the female version, and it's not as unusual as it would be now then.
Yeah, but she is called Wilhelmina.
Because the queen at the time is actually called Wilhelmina. So she is.
But would you call your kid like the queen? But
and
it's
would you call her Wim for short? Because it would be Will for short.
He does. But the kids in school, the girls in school call her Willy, and everybody else call her
Willy. Willy. Yeah. Willy is the diminutive.
The girl version.
The girl, the diminutive of Wilhelmina. Yeah. And so there's my take on that is gender roles, because basically the dad, there is no mom. Mom's gone a long time ago. Yeah. There is no mom, and the dad wanted a boy and pushes her into an idea, not against her will, by the way, again into an idea of not chivalry, but
he mentions gentlemanly behavior.
Yes.
And try to teach her gentlemanly behavior. And when you watch the movie, she never says something unkind. She always is polite. And when she is being accosted, she will retract herself from the situation rather than saying something unpleasant. So that did go through the rest of her life.
Yeah, and so the idea of him pushing her towards a kind of male gender role, not in a way for her to actually flip her gender, but to encompassed some of the ideas of
and I think
chivalry and
her whole aim was, after school, I get a job. She wasn't going to go to university because she was
she was not going to get married.
Low grades, so she just needed to get this diploma, and then the marriage is not. She was not pushed towards marriage at all. It was just, you go get a job, girl. You just go get yourself a job, and that was her only requirement. The only requirement the father put on her is find yourself well enough educated so you can get a job, and she does.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good thing in the 1930s to give to your kid.
Yeah, but it's unusual.
Yeah.
Because our grandmother, who lived roughly in the same time, she met our grandfather, and when they decided to, let's get on together, she had a job in the garment industry. A good job, and she was very valued, but then she got married, and they said in the garment industry,
you get married, that's it. But this goes on until the early 60s. Mm. It's like a married woman does not have a job.
So she takes it very seriously to get a job, but she still gets a job.
And if you do the calculations, she's probably just 18, like literally just. So it would be nice for her if she doesn't have to immediately get married and be dependent and have loads of kids and be even more dependent.
And the story is a little bit unclear in how much time it passes, but at least half a year to a year passes altogether. Yeah. So she's not quite as young anymore, which is good.
But she's young enough because then she meets this lovely man once she has the radio job. She's met the radio guy, Alfred Herder. And he has taken a shine to her, but he is not in the market really. And so he has to get used to the fact that she's interesting. That takes about the whole movie. And
then she meets
the other guy.
And when I first when I first saw Hans with his friend Bob, is going gaydar.
This is the gay couple next door. Yeah, because they live in the same building.
So gay together.
They're living in the apartment building. That's totally gay. These two lovely guys.
And we have to reassess that to Hans is at least
has to be bisexual because he starts to put the moves on our Willy.
Yeah. But I want to say something about Bob. Bob is very interesting because he has a stutter. And I've seen people have stutters in movies before, American movies, and they always make such fun of these people. And this film does not make it fun. They take it seriously. They take the time for it.
And it was a plot point because they normally there in Indonesia and all these other places, and they came back because he needed to see a specific specialist to deal with his stutter. And so that's actually a plot point for this couple, the gay couple.
Who is not gay. No, not a gay couple.
Slightly gay couple.
No, well, since...
Queer couple. Undetermined.
No, because Hans...
puts a move on.
So,
on Lily.
And
Bob, that I think is not nice because I was like, okay.
Well, he's just not gay because that's...
No, but not because he should be gay in the story, but because he puts the move on her and... Bob says to him, "Are you taking this serious? Go after the girl." But he's trying to say, "Take it seriously."
Yeah.
And
if you're going to do it, take it seriously.
And Hans turns out
to be
Hans has a mandatory fiancée that his dad is putting him up to. So, and he needs to marry for money.
Yeah.
And he knew this.
And
all along. And Bob may not have known this.
And when push comes to shove, he actually just absconds without telling our girl.
And Willy has made a jumper for her. She's knitted the jumper. She gave it to Bob. It was nicely wrapped, beautiful paper. And said, give it to Hans. Because, whatever, she was not going to be meeting him that day or whatever. Hans is like, oh, nice jumper, puts it in the suitcase, doesn't fit, and throws it away. It's like, it is very cleverly written because it shows how much he cared for her.
And that was the jumper that she worked on personally to make.
For weeks, and everybody knew about it. And it's like, okay, yes, he is a cad.
He is a cad.
He needs to go.
Interesting little detail which I noticed and going, what? She knitted a jumper, and then she irons it.
Yeah. No, that's correct.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because you have to, probably it was actual wool, so you have to kind of mold the wool and make sure that it's all even.
Okay.
Then you iron it, and then you can...
Well, it's in here, so
Yeah.
if it's correct, it's correct.
It's correct. Yeah, people then knew what... Yeah, we don't do these things these days anymore.
But back to the story. So she comes to Mr. Herder at the radio station because there's nothing else to be had, and he gives her a job as a typist. And then one night at 12 o'clock, the radio goes out at 12 o'clock.
Yes.
And when this guy becomes unwell, she just steps to the mic and says something nice.
Yeah, he reads a news bulletin of a train, and his wife was in the train, so he loses it right there and then.
And he can't do the proper closing,
No.
and then she has been
And it's
around
midnight.
long enough to know what the proper closing should be.
Yeah, so she's been there for a couple months at that point.
Yes. And then she does the closing, and then the big boss walks in because the closing didn't sound right like it normally did.
No, there's a woman on the radio.
And he just fires whoever comes close enough, except for the person
And
who's...
fires her on the spot.
And
Yes.
the next morning she's in her bed because what's the point getting up? And the next and at the station, they are inundated with phone calls going,
Yes.
"Who is this mystery woman
Which-
who said such wonderful things last night? And it was
Yes.
wonderful, and oh, we loved it." And they're trying to call her, but she's not picking up because she's
And she doesn't believe it. When she does pick up, she doesn't believe that it's actually the head of the studio. So she's like, yeah, you're making a joke on me. Good for you, but I'm going back to sleep. And it was just really well done. That's where you can tell she is just as good as Katharine Hepburn or people like that who can be comedic at the one time and then beautifully serious and solemn the next moment. And she has all of it.
Yeah.
And it's just so lovely.
And of course, then the studio makes her an offer to become a spokesperson, and she sort of goes, "What?" And to the point that they say, "Here's money," and she goes, "What? Oh, here's more money."
You don't mean it, and they go,
"What?
"Well, is it not
More money."
enough?" Oh, but we can offer more. Yes.
And in the end, she takes it, and she sort of goes, "Okay," and she becomes the voice of.
Originally, they only got her to do that closing. That was enough for them to say, we want to pay you loads and loads of money. But she starts doing more and more. She starts doing charity work for the radio.
For children.
The children's stuff.
For children's charity.
They just mention it here and there. And you go, oh, she's also doing that. So she's effectively full-time at work doing really good things.
Yeah. An interesting little detail, which of course, you only notice halfway through the movie. The movie actually opens with Lily Bouwmeester, the actress, and a person who is obviously a personality of some sort. I didn't know him, but it turns out he is. He's a radio man. Where they introduce the movie. And then the credits roll. And this setup is exactly later when Wim gets introduced to the general public as a radio personality inside the movie. So you get a fourth wall break, which is very interesting. Same radio personality standing next to her wearing the same dress, but now she's Wim. That's really well done.
Yeah. Yeah. And when they do this congratulatory affair, when it says, okay, we're just doing a vergadering.
And it turns out to be just
meeting.
A cocktail party, basically.
Yes, it's a cocktail party, and she's completely dossed out with everything. And then you have this guy who's probably the publicist, who starts to tell her, okay, this person is coming from this gossip magazine. Talk lots because they will shut up. And then the next one, okay, this is another gossip magazine. Don't say anything. They will be super impressed. And she does it, and she does it so well. And then she's looking, and she's, just standing there with her glass of champagne. And did I speak too much? Just enough.
She didn't say a word.
She didn't open her mouth. It's just so well done, and I think maybe they were lacking of money. That's great, but they did have a complete grand piano for the recordings of this, and they had all the champagne and stuff, so you could sort of like dress it up with
I think
your And the clothing they had really interesting.
I think what they did was make good use of what they had. So they have radio people who were in Hilversum, which the thing is set in Hilversum, but the actual recording studio for the film is in Dordrecht. It's not that far away from each other, bus ride or...
Well, it's in Netherlands, never far away from each other.
Exactly. But what they did to get things like the grand piano is get the guy who did the music. These people tend to come with musical instruments. And then you just take your camera to the grand piano and do your scene. Because basically that particular scene where they are actually rehearsing the song and looking at it is in a completely different place than from anything else. So it's not related, obviously. Smart making use of what you have.
Yeah, and then the clever writing is that she's there to rehearse to listen to the rehearsal of the song, and then she's already knitting, and she's got the dog that she's taking care of for Hans. So all of these storylines is what they do still to today. Is you have a storyline going, but you insert the next storyline in it already, and they had that down in this movie.
Yeah,
every scene has a point and goes towards the next.
Yeah, and then when Hans is called back by his father to come and marry whomever, and the Miss Money, and he, leaves Wim with the dog.
Yes, yes, and then she's quite happy to take care of the dog. But once she is, then our Mr. Herder and Willy get together, because she's crying on his shoulder, kind of. And then he's realizing that he's available, and once and then he says, if you want this, then we do have to get rid of the dog.
Well, the interesting thing is that she asks him for marriage, to marry him.
Yes,
and do you want to marry me? That she asked, and then he says, okay, we're going a little fast. How about 3 weeks? And then she says, I don't want to wait 3 weeks. And then he says, but the dog needs to go. And she says, I'll get rid of the dog right now, and then we can get married.
Yeah.
They do send the dog back to Hans. It doesn't go to the pound.
I think, maybe when you read the book, you may find that there is actually a theme of you have to give up something, you have to be willing to sacrifice something for what you want. There's nothing's going to come free. And one of the things is she needed to see that Hans was a disaster, and it's a good thing that they never took it to an actual engagement.
She dodged a bullet there.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
If Hans had been even worse, he would have married her.
Yeah.
Well, then he wouldn't have had the money. But he didn't know that she was a personality. If he'd known she was the radio personality, then he would have married her for the money. And
that's the only criticism I have of Wim is try not in real life. Try not to run to be that secretive.
Don't lie.
Don't lie. She did here, and it turned out okay, but it's not advisable.
Because the other guy was lying worse. But for Mr. Herder, he knows who she is. He knows where she came from. He even, was in.
But I do think with
Mr.
Herder, he is a full 10 to 15 years older than she is.
About 10, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, he's at least 30.
He's late 30, late 20s, and she was late teens when it started.
Yeah. So that he didn't try for her straight away is understandable if you see at the age difference. It's quite strong.
It's also, and he is living a life of I'm just working and nobody is pushing him to get married, and he's just not interested. But once he has a good working relationship with her, he's actually very interested. Yeah.
And on her part, it turns out she sort of gravitates to somewhat older people. As the one person we skipped was the butler. It's not really a butler.
Yeah.
The servant is also not the right word. The servant that the father used to have, Johan,
who is valet originally.
Valet. It's kind of, it doesn't translate much to on the language, but it was the person who took care of the house. He did all the work around the house, and then when the father dies, the aunt sacks him. But Wim stays in contact with him, even though he moves to his unmarried sister in Hilversum, and he is lower class, so he talks lower class, and he finds himself a nice girl, but she keeps in contact with him, and he's also a little older. He's at least 40. So she gravitates to older people.
She grew up with 2 guys in the house. and everybody's friendly. So there's no distance between the serving staff and that family. There's no Downton Abbey distance. There's no formal stuff.
At the time,
the aunt tried to put that back. It's like, no, he's just help.
Yeah.
He goes. Yeah.
And at the time in the Netherlands, it was perfectly normal for a middle class family to have at least one servant.
Yeah.
Our grandparents had a lady's maid in the house full time for a while.
Yeah,
in the 50s.
More like a housekeeper, not a lady's maid. Yeah.
Okay, same job but female
Yeah.
that this guy is doing.
Yeah.
So it's perfectly ordinary, normal, but
and in the 1930s, it was also normal in the US and in the UK.
Yeah. But you get a very interesting juxtaposition of it's not family, but he's family. She feels him as family. It's not even found family or something like that. She's just extended family
like sort
to
of
her.
uncle status.
So he has an uncle status to her, but it's a different kind of uncle than a normal uncle would have. He has a different authority over her. In fact, they're actually more on a level in that way. But it's complicated, and it's complicated. And as the world progressed from that point, it got so complicated that it just disappeared because it couldn't work.
Well, it goes right into wartime. So after that, all bets are off. You have to reinvent life.
Even in the 50s, they had situations like it.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a good solution.
She's not likely to take such a servant on anymore. But
when she gets married to Meneer Herder, Mr. Herder,
and both
then
of them are doing very well.
If she has a household, but now Johan actually has a lady, and so they would have to take them on as a couple, which might be interesting. I don't know if they're both keep on working, because she is now famous. If Herder marries her, she doesn't have to give up her job because she is an entertainer. An entertainer, that's different. So they would have both incomes, and hers is going to be real good.
Much better than
and
his.
She can hire Johan and his interesting lady to do whatever. So the future is open for her. Something that is interesting for Dutch people, in the States, Christmas, really big. In the Netherlands, also in 1939, New Year's Eve, very big. So the party of the year, the one she actually has to go to, that's the most important party, is it's called Old Year in Dutch. The evening is called Old Year, and then the next day is called New Year's Day. Yeah. And so at the Old Year party, they take it very seriously. So it's nice. It's just for them to include that. Yeah. So this is basically an Old Year movie.
It pretty much is, yeah.
It is set through an entire year, I think.
Yeah, it's not an Old Year movie because the plot doesn't revolve around it, but it does happen in the movie. Acting is great. The writing is good. We know why, because they got the right people. If you're only doing one movie in the entire country, then you can get the best of the best to do them. So you have the star.
The best of the best
shining star, and you have the best of the best supporting cast, and you have the best of the best writers.
Yeah,
and you take the director, which was not a local director, but
really good, because he was really good, and he, even though he was not Dutch, and I don't know how much Dutch he knew at this point. I'm going to look him up and see how long he was in the Netherlands. Is that he? One of the complaints that the one or two other movies that were made that I heard from one of the actors in one of the movies is that because of the foreign director, they couldn't understand that locals have local accents. And they were doing the Jantjes, which is absolutely Amsterdam, flat Amsterdam and accent. Yeah. And this guy was going, why do you sound so strange? Sound more normal. No, it doesn't work that way. And here, Johan has the proper accent for what he should have, which is Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is set in Hilversum, which is where the radio studios are.
And this is as Dutch as you can get.
Yeah,
As
so all you have to do is like clean up your language, and you are sounding like people sounded on the radio at that time. Especially the school teacher, I felt, was more like that particular posh radio voice, whereas the rest was more normal, like how you would actually address each other.
That gentleman, that the one that came again for the medal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I some of these gentlemen that are in here, and I think this was one, are gentlemen of name, and the guest stars are gentlemen of name. So I think this one was one of those.
And the history teacher, she also had that particular radio style pronunciation, which is a little bit more posh than normal, I would think, that you would do in that area. And then that basically became generally accepted Dutch. I don't know if it worked that way, but that's generally accepted Dutch. It was like, let's posh it down a bit, but then that's what we speak.
It's like BBC English.
Yeah.
But it's Hilversum Dutch.
Yeah. So there's no dialect there, not even with the local guy for Hilversum.
But whatever there was there, which was Johan, was left that way. The director didn't phase it out. So
it was nowhere near as heavy as an Amsterdam accent.
No, of course not. And I don't know if it might even be this conversation we might be having might be about this self-same director. I don't know, because there weren't that many directors. So
if you have to get them from Foreign basically we didn't have them.
So if this stuff sounds stilted and very posh, that may be a reason for it. And then once you have made a film that is like that, then the next film is going to be in the similar style, because that's how it goes. So this thing is propagated no matter what you do.
Yeah, so I'm interested in watching the Pygmalion one, because then that actually works with accents. That works with inner city accent, and it works with like what a professor would speak and what would be considered as good, acceptable Dutch for society.
Yeah, I remember that Daddy Longlegs is the one she did first, and then the Pygmalion after. Reverse? Mm-hmm. Okay. So because I did see the Daddy Longlegs.
36, 37, Pygmalion, 38, the Daddy Longlegs.
They must have made it right after Leslie Howard did the other Pygmalion.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's why they did it.
Yes, I think so.
Because they had a Dutch translation.
Yeah, because the play...
it was playing on the stage. Yeah.
The play is a play by Shaw, which was already like 20, 30 years old. So there would have been a Dutch translation ready to go. So easy to do. And,
And then all you need is your stars, really. And, of course, a director. But you need your stars. I think she basically makes this movie.
Oh, God, yes.
So incredibly much.
And at first, when she starts...
She shines.
When she starts, you have to get used to the style of this... 1939, but with 1936 ideas of just style of acting. But very quickly you get over that, because she is so good.
Yeah, she sells the whole thing.
Yeah,
and you need that with these movies that are the storytelling that's based on a very optimistic young woman, which is the Pollyanna and the Anne of Green Gables type of thing, and the Annie thing, which I think is based on Anne of Green Gables, literally has that tomorrow thing in it. What we haven't discussed yet is the slogan is Morgen gaat het beter. Tomorrow things will be better, and that's tomorrow. The sun will come out. That is the same thing. So that sentiment was going around the world in the deep dark 30s, because people were so bogged down with life. People couldn't get anything, couldn't move forward. You need that kind of relentless optimism.
Yeah.
And who better to deliver it than a young woman who literally can make you believe it. And I think that's also literally what she does on the radio. Is she says, go to sleep, have a really good rest.
Tomorrow will be better.
Tomorrow it will be better, you will see. And one time she is down and out when she's been two-timed by Hans. And she's drinking and all of that. And then they put the record of her, because she's actually one time missing her speaking on the radio, and they put a record on of her own voice.
On the whole, Dutch radio, and this is detriment because now we don't have stuff, it was all live. All of it was live all the time. And there were no pre-recorded stuff, and even in American radio,
That was that
British,
was true until Bing Crosby
and
came
so
up
when
with
she doesn't show up, she actually would have lost her job if it turned out that somebody, possibly Herder, hadn't just sneaked in a record recording of a couple of these speeches of hers, and they put that in. Otherwise, she would have lost her job. Yeah. But that is unusual, and they do present it as such, as this is not normal.
Oh yeah, he saves the day, and then she listens to herself.
And she's quite drunk at the time. Yeah, and she's sad
also,
and drunk.
She's with some woman in a bar, and this
also
woman
great
is
actress.
saying,
very
everyone is awesome, and this woman says, "Oh, I listen to her every night." Everybody she meets says, "I listen to her every night, and she makes me feel so good." And then she's like, "Oh, well, that's great," but then she listens to herself, and she actually hears the effect of what she's been doing.
Yeah. And that helps her a lot.
And I think that is one of the reasons they made these type of films, because people needed a lift. Yeah.
Because it's the 1930s.
The Great Depression was horrible.
This is a depression movie. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then the question comes to me is that, was it also a pre-war movie? Because you definitely need
they had no idea. They had in the Netherlands we had no idea of what was
how bad it would be.
There was some idea of war was coming, but since the Dutch had set out World War I, and they're sort of going, we're going to do that again, and then
that didn't happen.
Exactly, but in 1939 they had no idea, none at all.
Yeah.
So
because at that time we already see it in, for instance, Gone with the Wind, where there is a call to, this is going to be bad, but we will go through it.
Yeah, and this call for tomorrow will be better. It's an idol. It turns out to be idle.
Oh,
they have no idea.
It will not be better tomorrow. No, they're screwed. Seriously screwed.
And I will look up some of the actors and see what happens. I do know that Wim Kan ended up in a Japanese internment camp. The Japanese ran the internment camp in Indonesia. He survived, lived to be a long age, but it wasn't fun. He made the joke.
Don't go to Indonesia in the war.
He made the joke of the Japanese of the Japanese taught me how to eat with chopsticks.
Oh.
It was very easy because there was nothing in between them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So great. And this is probably one of the nicest stories of this. Which we
don't want to hear any.
The actress who played that innkeeper where she goes to get drunk, I ended up incidentally looking her up. She's a famous actress. Almost everybody who's older is a famous actor of the time. But everybody stage. Mm-hmm. So, there should be a DVD version with English subtitles. I saw it had English subtitles, but I don't.
We may see it here.
And I don't have it physically to actually check that they're not lying, because that happens. But on the website it says there are English subtitles on the DVD, so I would recommend
watching it. Yeah. Absolutely. It doesn't matter which country you're from.
No, this is a good movie.
It's not dependent on any local knowledge at all.
And I was worried because one of the things is, if you don't have a good cinema industry, then you don't learn enough about making scripts and stuff like that. And there was no problem here at all.
Was fine.
There's nothing too much and there's nothing too little in this script. This is a good script. The only thing that for the technique that I want to say is that the cut I watched, the movies used to be in reels, in many reels for one movie, usually about 10-15 minutes per reel. And then as you show them in the cinema, every time you have to switch over, and every time you switch over, you have like this little X and a little dot, and the end of the last bit and the beginning of the previous bit usually gets chewed up after a while. This one has that a lot. There's a lot of
Yeah.
chewed up bits, which somebody should restore them at some point. It's not anything major except for one time where I go, oh, I would have liked to hear the last bit of that. It's missing. I can infer what it should have been, but it's not there. That's a technique they need to find. It would be nice if they found a relatively clean cut and then just reconstruct what was missing, which we should be able to do now with AI. Pretty soon we'll be able to do that. Just AI, Lily Bouwmeester.
Yeah. People don't like that.
But this is where you should use it.
Yeah. This
To
old
make
stuff.
those 5 little seconds that are missing, you want to put them back in. That's what AI should be used for. So it's nice that these things still exist, especially of all these actors and the radio people who are ephemeral.
Yeah.
The radio stuff is gone,
That
and
was so much fun.
the stuff on stage is gone. But we have this film document
Yeah.
of these people, and that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
For Dutch, but also the same thing applies for any English American stuff. Some of these people are only now preserved on film, and that's it. Lily Bouwmeester lives on film,
Yeah.
which is kind of sad, but also kind of beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, glad we have at least that.
Yes.
And you can tell the makeup that she has is definitely still slanted towards the early 30s.
Oh God, yes.
We would not consider this at all in comparison with Gone with the Wind. That was much more modern makeup in there.
I think they were going for a bright makeup, which is more of a stage makeup, with bright lips, popping eyes.
You can say that the styling of the lips is completely like 1933 kind of stuff. It's certainly not going towards the 40s.
It's staged, so you can make sure that the back of the house can also see it. You know, that is a criticism of this thing, is that they're so used to stages that they're doing lots for the back of the house.
One thing that you will notice, even though it's a girls' school that she's in the beginning, is everybody's wearing their own clothes. We do not have school uniforms.
Yeah, but there's
never
never been
then, and we don't have them now.
We never had school uniforms ever for kids. Not military, yes, but kids no.
So the girls are all wearing their nice clothes. You can see that they're nice dresses. It is a good.
And when father dies, and she arrives in a black dress.
Yes, and they remark on it even during the exams. They remark, why is the girl wearing a black dress? And the other girls move to her and shake her hand in sympathy for
And
for
again,
the loss.
Like at the beginning, the blackout for the exams. It's a parent dying. One of your schoolmates' parent dying is another theme that happens. It happens everywhere, everywhere. And there was one in your class, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's rare, but not so rare that it doesn't happen. So this is very relatable.
Yeah.
And what do you do then? And for whatever reason, this parent dies, and these people are so young. It's one in the class. It's going to happen to, you know.
Yeah.
And so I found a bunch of these things that are very things that Dutch people would find interesting and that you would never see in American movies, like the blackout and like this.
Well, one of the things that I was noticing when I started watching the movie is that her mother is already dead and then her father dies. And then I'm thinking, because of that eternal optimism, and she's really good, she's got the gift of the gab, I was definitely feeling, okay, somebody's read Anne of Green Gables. Which is fine, you know. By that time, everybody's read Anne of Green Gables. If you
it's
read
not a bad
stuff,
thing to read. Yeah.
you will have read Anne of Green Gables, so that's just fine. But it is a very known story setting. Is there's an orphan, and she's a little older, so she can actually go out and traverse the world by herself. She's just old enough. She has her diploma.
Yeah, I think maybe this is the story of, yes, there is an orphan, but at least the orphan has background because the father and the father gave her stuff to carry on.
So it's got a lot of good messages because it's like, okay, love your children, give them a good education, but that's also that he was taking her seriously as a person. You know, he was talking to her like an actual equal, and he was giving her advice, but he wasn't ordering her around.
Yeah.
By the time she's 17, 18, there's no point in ordering her around. But they would do that in those days, and these days plenty of people still do that.
Yeah, and then be surprised when the child doesn't want to do it anymore.
So you got a lot of unconventional parenting going on in this literature of, young girl has to go into the world. In the case of Anne of Green Gables, she ends up at a completely different family that actually starts to parent her because she didn't have any to start with.
But she was quite
much
younger.
More difficult situation.
And she's quite a bit younger. She's like 10 years younger, yes.
And that's what saves Willy. She's 18. Yes. She has her diploma. So she can be taken seriously in the world. She goes from schoolgirl to adult. Adult that can get a job and go be a person and she make her own money, and there's no question that she and she doesn't even have an identity crisis at that point because she is prepared. She is prepared by her dad enough to get there. It would have been nice if he would have been able to stick around for 2 or 3 years more, but that's not what happened, and she still weathered it. So he did a good job. He did the best he could, and it was good enough. And she's awesome. She's bringing positivity into the world, the wider world, because of radio. Yeah,
and the fact that she did a little tango with Hans, actually, it gave her an idea of dating. So not dating around, but just this person I'm going to maybe marry, what would I want them to be like? And she got a taste, and then she decided on what she wanted. Hey, I don't know. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, it's all good. So I would recommend it. What about you?
Yes, I would recommend it, and I think that is my opinion.
And my opinion. And we're sticking to it.